Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our annual Alumni Leaders on Campus Day. This program is a collaboration between the Office of Alumni Relations and the John Hazen White College of Arts and Sciences, and it celebrates our alumni who are doing such great things in their respective facets of industry. We have some amazing alumni here to speak with you today, and we're so grateful that they have taken their time when they have such busy schedules to be here, and I know you'll find their experiences and stories inspiring. If you have questions for the alumni, you'll have the opportunity to ask them toward the end of the program. So thank you everyone for joining us, and alumni, if you could please take a moment to introduce yourselves and share your major, the year you graduated, your current position, and a brief description of what you do. You want to start, Jonathan?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Dufremont. Class of 2021, I majored in political science. I currently work for the state of Rhode Island. I'm a policy analyst for the House Minority Office in the General Assembly. I primarily work with appropriations bills and fiscal notes. I work for the House Committee on Finance, which currently has two reps sitting on it, Representatives George Nardone and Representative Robert Quattrochi. They work, like I said, with appropriations bills, the state budget, taxes, things like that, all of those lovely things that impact the day-to-day with the state. I write policy briefs, do research for them, and equip them with all the necessary materials so that they can go to the floor, they can go to their committees, and they can express their thoughts properly, clearly, and make a difference.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael D. Pascal, class of 2018. I was a criminal justice major, and I am a judicial law clerk at the Connecticut Appellate Court. I do research and legal writing for a particular judge, and basically I help make sure that everything that's coming out of the court makes sense.
Hi everyone, I'm Lena Terry. I'm class of 2018. I studied media and communications, and I am the founder of Pronto Public Relations. I essentially help small businesses, whether they're independently owned or it's a boutique property, hotel, and then family and chef-owned restaurants and also hotels.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanne Suarez. I am class of 2017. Groundbreaking class in arts and science in the counseling psychology program. I am the founder and executive director of Latinx Bioethics, and what my organization does is we focus on ethical and moral issues impacting Latino communities in public health and biomedical sciences, so anything from ethical patient-centered care to evidence-based methods that inform public health policies and programs, and anything that interacts with health and social determinants.
Great, thank you so much. Could you tell us a little bit about your first jobs after graduation or potentially a graduate school experience and how those led to other opportunities?
Sure. So when I graduated, I started to work for a law firm named Clark & Elbing. It's an intellectual property law firm in Boston, one of the largest on the East Coast. Working at the law firm, I was able to pick up a lot of skills that were transferable to the position I have currently, but it wasn't really the end-all be-all in terms of me actually obtaining the position I have. When I was a junior and a senior, I had interned at the Rhode Island State House and made a lot of connections working on campaigns and working in offices and in politics, and was really able to get a foothold into the Rhode Island GOP, which allowed me to kind of open up some doors, open up some opportunities, which allowed me to get the position that I have now, work with the people I do, the people that I've met. I've met some incredible people along the way, and yeah.
So after graduation, I went to Roger Williams University School of Law. And while I was in law school, I worked at a divorce law firm for a little while. I worked as a teaching assistant for a writing professor, and I worked at a firm called Cameron Middleman, which is a business litigation firm here in Providence. Those various positions gave me a lot of experience in legal research and writing, which helped me get my positions after law school, which was a judicial law clerk for the Connecticut Trial Court for a year, and my current position as a judicial law clerk at the Connecticut Appellate Court.
So I didn't have as great luck as my fellow panelists here. I actually If anyone else is a media and communications major, you know how saturated the field is. And I struggled to find a job, I'm not going to lie. I actually ended up taking an internship program with a really great travel PR company in New York City. And I was there for about 6 months. And then once I had that kind of under my belt, even on top of the other internships that I had, while studying at school, I was then able to start racking up other positions at other agencies in New York City, and eventually now having my own agency.
So I also struggled to get a job when I graduated, so I took a year off and was working in education advocacy, and that led to an opportunity as a psychiatric rehabilitation specialist for CBFS, which is a community-based program that just sends people into communities to support folks that are living with debilitating psychiatric illnesses. And then our program lost funding because another mental health program acquired it, so we had to shut the program down, and then I went to work with a rehabilitation program for Latinas overcoming substance use and domestic violence, and from there I went back to get my master's in bioethics at Harvard Medical School. And now I'm here as founder of one of the bioethics emerging subfields.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And could you tell us a little bit about how you feel the university helped prepare you for a successful career?
Yeah, in terms of the university helping me, there was a course that I took called Research Methods in Political Science. It was one of the first experiences I'd had really diving into data and figuring out ways in which I could parse information properly to be able to formulate thoughts, express those on paper, and really add structure to my writing and my learning that I carried into my current field now. One of the biggest things I do with my job right now is I write policy briefs, research papers, and white papers, which kind of outline specifics of data, research that I'm currently working with, initiatives that the reps are currently working with, and that course specifically really helped me develop and grow into the position that I have right now.
So for me, the university helped me in a couple ways, and one of the biggest ones was the distinction between here and other universities, in that I got to start out with criminal justice classes from the get-go. And I came here wanting to go into law enforcement after college, and after a few classes that were fantastic classes, I nonetheless realized that that wasn't really the route for me, and that kind of gave me the opportunity to figure out what exactly I want to do and why I was here. And I knew that I had an interest in the law and in social justice, and the emphasis that the school places on internships was what really helped me kind of find my way. I did an internship in my last year with the court-appointed special advocate for children here at the Rhode Island Family Court, and I got to work with a lot of abused and neglected children and attorneys in that office who represent those children in the best interest of the child. I got to see a lot of really unique perspectives, and it really kind of lit a fire within me to do what I'm doing now. But it's something I hadn't even thought about until I went to the career office and said, I want to do an internship, but I don't really know what. So finding that was really kind of a turning point for me in my career.
So I actually transferred here my sophomore year. I started out at a small private school right outside of Philadelphia as a criminal justice major, thinking that I wanted to be a detective. Didn't really love the classes, didn't really feel a connection with anyone that was teaching me what I was learning. And on a whim, I decided to switch schools and switch majors. I originally came here for culinary because I thought I wanted to be a baker. I was kind of going through like a little bit of a crisis, as most freshmen to sophomores normally do. And it wasn't until I started here on a whim, media and communications, I met the professors who were so insightful and so helpful, and just kind of like allowing me to kind of try different areas of the industry, and went through marketing, went through advertising, and then kind of dove into PR, and with internships and extra supplemental activities, it kind of helped form what I wanted to do. But I would say it's definitely the professors who helped guide me to where I am today.
I echo Katie. I also went through like an existential crisis while I was here. I started as a hospitality major, and then I was like, no, this is not for me. Then I went to criminal justice, and I loved the classes, but I took a course with Mary Dias called Deviant Behavior, and I was like, ooh, I think I like this class a lot. So I took another course with Mary Dias, and I had conversations with her about like, what did that mean for human development and all of that. And I was like, oh, maybe I want to switch into this new major, counseling psychology. And I do agree that it was the professors that helped me really cultivate my passion for serving the community. My professors were so compassionate and understanding. Not only did they have like a breadth of knowledge in their field, but they really made sure that the students understood what that meant for like the communities we were gonna go into and work after, and that really made an impact, and it's what eventually led to me wanting to work in mental health after.
Thank you, everyone, for those wonderful answers. Something we all discuss as we get older is this idea along the lines of, if I only knew then what I knew now, what I know now. The audience and I would like to hear what you might have done differently during your undergraduate years and how it might have helped you. And this might be working part-time, taking different or extra classes, joining certain clubs, anything that might come to mind. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would definitely say is I'd wished, looking back, that I had a little bit better of a work-life balance, kind of between, I was working 2 part-time jobs at the time, trying to juggle classes and the extracurricular activities on campus that I was involved in. I almost intentionally made college a nightmare, thinking that I had to be able to stay on top of my debt and maintain my finances while doing my classes and still keeping up with my social obligations and all of those things. And I think that's something that kind of handicapped me in the end, because I found myself oftentimes very burnt out, and I didn't have the energy to actually do the things that I wanted to do because I'd committed myself to so many things and really overextended myself in that regard.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I also worked part-time while I was in school, but that was something that kind of helped prepare me for law school, I think, was the additional stress on top of learning. As far as like what, if only I knew then what I know now, I think it would just be a willingness to try new things and to take bold steps. I'm the first person in my family to go to law school, and it was something I had never even really considered, and I waited a while into my degree program before I made the decision that I was going to give it a shot. And I think if I had kind of accepted that that was where the direction I was going in, or accepted that I could do that, I would have been able to kind of get an earlier start on learning, studying for the LSAT, and kind of just understanding what was coming next for me.
So I think when you're someone like me who was having like an internal crisis on like trying to decide what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I took a lot of internships and I did a lot of side work and or volunteer work just to kind of like get my feet wet and immerse myself into the various subsectors of the communications industry. And so I think if I could have gone back and I thought that I wanted to do PR as now my main career, I think I would have done more internships focused on that side of the industry versus, a marketing internship or a social media internship. And while I think that they're all super beneficial and I don't necessarily regret it, if anything, I wish I had done more internships in an area that I thought that I would then pursue full time, if that makes sense. So take on as many internships as you can, because I think that they're super important and they help you kind of, pave a way to your ultimate career goal.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. I agree with everything that you guys said. I also worked like 2 or 3 jobs sometimes while I was in undergrad. I went through that crisis, but I do think that taught me to build like tough skin and learning that school is not always going to be just school. You have to prepare for the next step. and that work and class balance really helped me. One of the things that I wish I would have taken advantage of was the study abroad. I was like a little bit scared of immersing myself in like another country or an experience, only to look back and just, oh, I wish I would have done that. And also office hours. Just because that's your designated professor or your designated cohort doesn't mean that you can't go to someone else's office hours. Like, the professors here are so willing to meet and chat, and those conversations outside from the internships and those like really hands-on experiential paths that you go on, like your professors are your #1 resource. I think I wasn't the only one that struggled with that. Like, a lot of people in my class also were like, oh, should I go to office hours? Should I not go to office hours? Or I'm interested in this outside of like counseling psychology, like I want to talk to this person, but we were really scared to we were like a little like, oh, but that's the professor, you know, we put him on a high pedestal. Just make sure you like go out there, make yourself known, and let your professors be like your guiding path, because they know they're with you like 7-8 hours a day. So they'll be able to have those real honest conversations with you about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Wonderful, thank you. Those are great points you each made. Now that you're each engaged in your current position, what kind of qualities do you tend to look for in younger team members?
I'd say specific to politics, two of the big things are drive and passion. Politics can sometimes be relatively unrewarding in the sense of sometimes not everything that you work on comes to fruition, always gets used out on the floor or in committees or in commissions. But if you're passionate about it and you really care about what you're doing, oftentimes you don't mind that that's the case because you care so much about the briefs that you're working on or the research that you're doing or the constituents that you're helping, so on and so on. Another really important thing that we look for, specifically in interns and things like that, is a willingness to take on tasks that they're not familiar with, really stepping out of your comfort zone. When I was an intern in the office that I currently work in now, our fiscal policy analyst had to step out, take a leave of absence for a little while, and he was gone, and then he eventually left. And in that meantime, I kind of took it upon myself to see if I could fill the role and learn for someone that didn't have a finance background, had a very minuscule and rudimentary economics background, see if I could fill the shoes and step up to the plate and provide the office with the services that it needed in that time. And I think that's one of the things that helped me in the case of standing out, but also has helped interns that we've had in the past, especially under my watch, is some people really just go above and beyond the call of duty to provide everything that's needed for the office and the team members that they're working with, and they really make a difference, and it's so fantastic that we have them. And if any of you guys are interested in interning, you can look at our website, rigop.com.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Jonathan just said. I think the biggest thing is just an eagerness to learn, and especially in the law, an eagerness to learn and a willingness to kind of be wrong. And I think that's not just in the law, that's in law school, that's even now in college. I think the way that we learn the most is by, saying something that you're not really sure of, or maybe you are sure of, and you're just wrong. And that's okay, because you're gonna remember the correct answer to that from now on. And I think that in the law in particular, there is so many gray areas, and in many, 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 many instances, reasonable minds could differ. So I think eagerness to learn combined with kind of just an impersonal approach to your own conclusions is kind of the best way to learn and to be a team player.
So I am not in politics, obviously, so I can't speak or agree with necessarily everything that they say, but also I work by myself. I'm still growing my business. It blossomed during the pandemic, but I think something that I've seen as I've talked with other people who were kind of in a similar boat, where you guys are sitting. I connect with Professor Carey, if anyone's familiar, and I speak with her class a bunch. And I always get questions afterwards. It's like, where do I start? Where do I begin? And so for me, I think that's where I look at right now, or it's what I can provide answers to. And it's really just about researching the type of PR that you want to do, because the industry covers so many different areas. Like you have politic PR and you have biotech PR and healthcare, and those are all wildly different in a sense. But I think it's really important to just do your research beforehand, and then reach out to people, whether via a LinkedIn connection or it's a professor or any of the panelists. I think it's building the connections and then circling back and kind of just making sure that you are fully immersed in what you want to learn, or you should be open to being fully immersed in what you want to learn. That's what I have to say.
So I cross all of y'all's disciplines in my work. And one of the things that I really look for is an eagerness to learn, curiosity. But along with that, not being afraid to challenge me, because I'm not always gonna be right. And when I find young folks that are willing to hey, Ms. Joanne, I think what you said, I don't agree with that. I'm like, okay, tell me more, because then that allows me to kind of plug in, this person is someone that I can mentor. This is someone that I will be able to learn from them, and they'll be able to learn from me. And that's very important. I think that oftentimes when we're forming teams, there's this conception that there's the boss and then I'm working under the boss. I am far from that kind of boss. I see my peers and the people that work with me as my equals, and I like to create that space where we can have that dialogue and be honest, because that does contribute to your growth. And it does contribute to the kinds of leaders that you learn to surround yourself with, and the kinds of leaders that you want to bring into your circle so that you can grow professionally as well.
And if I could add to that, actually, to go off of what I was saying before, don't be afraid to be wrong, but a lot of times you will be right. And there have been times where I'm talking with a judge who graduated law school the year I was born and has been doing this for a long time, and judges are wrong too, lawyers are wrong too. You should accept the possibility of being wrong, but just because you're young or you're new in your industry doesn't mean you have nothing to contribute.
I want to add to that. As people that work with a lot of lawyers and doctors, I think that one of the things that you all have to understand too is that fields are changing, technology is changing, the culture around health and sciences and any field, communications, everything is changing. I think that that's one thing that COVID taught us, but it was also a hint that we got before COVID emerged. So you guys have an exposure that we may not have, because you went through 3 cycles of evolution throughout this pandemic, and you may be able to teach us some things that we may not be hip to. Because I'm gonna be honest, some of us are in the previous learning age, and you guys come with all this knowledge, and we're like, oh, this is such an asset to my team. I need that.
Thank you so much. I love this interdisciplinary exchange here. It's fantastic. So as we wind down, would each of you be willing to leave us with one final piece of advice that you believe the students need to hear before beginning their careers?
Sure. So the piece of advice that I would give is to network early and network often. If I could share a personal story, when I was 18 and I was a freshman at Johnson & Wales, and I'd first come onto campus, one of the first classes I took was an introduction to political science course. I thought it was the coolest thing on the face of the planet. I'd been super involved in politics in Massachusetts, where I'm from, and when I was in high school. But one of the things that kind of daunted on me was, I know nothing about Rhode Island politics. I don't know any of the candidates. It was an election year at that point. I don't know the state of the campaigns. I haven't met anybody. So we had a consultant come in and speak with the class and kind of talk about how he works with candidates, sets them up with the resources that they need to run appropriate campaigns and elections, get help. And I believe his name was Mike Napolitano. And this gentleman came in, and I asked the professor after he'd left, because he'd gone out the door and it hit me a little too late. I wanted to see if I could his contact information, phone number, email, anything. And I reached out to him and I just said, I'm new to Rhode Island. I'm not very familiar with the political scene. Do you know any candidates that may need help with their campaigns that year? Anybody that needs doors knocked, flyers passed out, someone to hold a sign, do some exit polling, anything. And he put me in touch with now Representative George Nardone, and I worked on his campaign through my freshman year into my sophomore year. And through the connections that I made with the consultant and Representative Nardone, I was able to inevitably get an internship and then another internship and really grow connections in the office that I currently work in now. And then through that, a couple years had gone by when a position opened up. I was asked, hey, would you like to come back? You spent 6 months here as an intern. You know all of these people in the office. You know all of these people in Rhode Island politics. You're relatively engrossed into the system at that point. We'd love to have you come and join our team. None of that would have happened had I not asked my professor for the contact information of that consultant that came in and spoke to the class. So there really is value and there really is great importance in chasing down leads, passing out. You can do QR codes on your phone now with LinkedIn. If you don't have business cards or anything like that, you can have them scan the QR code for LinkedIn, pass out those things. Technology has opened up the door for so many networking capabilities outside of what you would at like a conference or at school or anything like that. Everybody should take the time to look into those resources and do as much as you can, because I will tell you from personal experience, it does make a difference.
I would echo that as well. I think networking is incredibly important, but I would also emphasize just the importance of hard work. At the end of the day, I can network with 100 people, but if there's an applicant next to me who's worked a lot, who has just the better credentials because they've kept their head down and worked hard, like it's going to help, but can't guarantee that you're going to get the position. So I think it's definitely a balancing act, and a lot of where I've gotten has been through just what I've done, what you're doing when no one else is around, like whether you're studying or going out with your friends. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out with your friends, but there's a time and place for everything, and I think you need to just understand what works best for you and how you're best going to succeed.
So I would say building off of networking, because that's obviously super important, and being really good at what you do during that time is really important as well. You might hate your internship or the job that you're at, but I think the harder you work, it shows your superiors or your bosses, someone that's probably going to have to write a recommendation for you for another job, or they're going to have to circle back and be like, how is this person working under you? Are they responsive? Are they, accepting to, learn that they're wrong, and like how can they, or do they accept, bettering themselves and doing something a different way. But also, I'm a firm believer in as long as you work really hard and you understand your industry really well, you can definitely go off and build something of your own, and start a business that you're really passionate about. Work your butt off for 2-3 years, depending on what industry. I don't know how politics works, but in the communications world, you can get a couple of years under your belt and understand it really well to know that if there's another industry or niche part of the industry that you think that you can do better, or bring something different to the table, I should word, take that chance, because if you fail, you fail, but at least you could say that you tried. But at the end of the day, sometimes it could really make a difference, and you could be really happy, and you could have a really successful career in something that you worked your butt off for all these people that you might not have loved working with or for, but at the end of the day, you can be like, those experiences helped me to get to where I am today.
Again, ditto, ditto, ditto. I think that if there's one thing I can give you guys a nugget is, like they said, don't be afraid to just jump into things. You may fail, but that's good. But I also want to emphasize self-care. Because especially these days, I come from a program that it's all about self-care and caring for others. But when we are working hard or we're so dedicated in our positions, Like, and I do this too, like you get so invested in the work and like you want to build it and you want to make sure it's good quality because your name is behind it, that we forget to like take a step back and take a deep breath. And that's very important because you don't want to burn yourself out, then you really won't be able to do anything. You also don't want to get to a point where like your mental health is bleeding over into all the other facets of your work. And for us who like are tenured in our fields, like we're able to spot that in folks that work for us. Like we're able to see like, oh, maybe this person is not showing up as their best self to work, and that's okay. But just make sure that you're really taking a step back as you're immersing yourself into whatever job you have or whatever career you have, to really like lean on your networks and like also take some introspection time and think about, what do I need from me right now? Because some people think that that's a weakness, but it's not. It makes you strong and it makes you able to show up to work and really be that dedicated person and be that person that stands out because you're modeling for others what they should do in a work-life balance.
Thank you. I think I'd like to pick up on that thread a little bit. The word balance has come up several times, and I think students often mention that they struggle to find the line between the incredible dedication and hard work that you've each described that you put in to get to where you are, but balancing that with overall well-being. Are there certain strategies, and we don't have to go down the line, you can jump in, you know, if you haven't thought about this, certain strategies that you tend to employ in terms of time management or work-life balance, so you're bringing your best to the table and also taking care of yourself? Other thoughts there?
I can start us off. I am the boundary queen, honey. And when I'm at work and I'm like, okay, today is not a good day, I tell my boss, I'm like, listen, I'm gonna close myself in my office. Please text me or Slack me if you need anything, but I need space for me today. And I encourage everyone to do that in my office. Like outside my door, I have a poster that says, "Did you take care of yourself today?" Like, because I want people to understand that they can tell their superiors, hey, today is not a good day. My schedule's booked, but I'm gonna clear my day to just embed myself in admin work. If you need me, I will come back up to surface. If the building is burning, I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm not a firefighter, so just give me some space so I can reboot. Because I work in politics, and it's tough. It's really tough. So you have to make sure that, oh, let me take a deep breath and then bring it back home.
Yeah, I can kind of build off of that because she'd mentioned how it is in politics as well. Boundaries are very important, but also portioning your time in an appropriate way so that you don't burn yourself out. One of the things that I kind of struggled with when I started working my first job after school, so at the law firm, was I would take home work with me, and I valued the time that I gave to my employer more than the time that I gave to myself, and I think that was a big mistake. You oftentimes, kind of like what I was talking earlier, you find yourself burnt out, aggravated, and when you're taking that work home with you, there's no delineation between this is work and this is home. This is an environment where I don't need to worry about office politics. I don't need to, sit behind a computer under artificial light and plug numbers into a spreadsheet for 8 hours in the day. It's like I can, relax, play with my dog, cook a meal, what have you. It's really important to set that boundary because when the two start to bleed together, it almost never leads to anything good.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. For me, that's what got me through law school especially, was I would get there at 8:30-ish in the morning and stay however late I needed to stay. But when I left everything at school. And I mean, it helped me so much. And then COVID hit and I was, working from home or doing school from home, like I'm sure all of you have experienced to one extent or another. And that became really, really difficult. But I think having a line between just being able to put your work down is sometimes really hard, but cannot overemphasize how important it is. And in my actual work life, I try to get outside and walk, even if it's just 10 minutes every day, get some fresh air, get out from underneath that artificial light. And at the end of my workday, I like to take 10, 15 minutes to meditate and just unwind, just to, again, kind of punctuate my day from work to personal. So again, you don't have that bleed through that is definitely the cause of burnout.
So I'll quickly touch on that. I work for myself, so I don't have a superior to be like, I get it, and I hear you, and I agree. For me, I'm on literally all the time. So like, even though my phone's on silent, like I have emails that I have to answer as soon as I get off this thing, and I'm okay with that. You know, I chose that for myself. But for me, in the way that I decompress and like disassociate myself, because you really, again, it's a burnout in a different way, especially in a creative field. I think what you guys do is so different than what I do as well. But I mean, they're both challenging in their own respective ways. But I think it's important to like truly disassociate yourself for whether it's a day or, you know, a long weekend, just to really be like, hey, to my clients, I'll be out of office. I will be available, but like, don't email me. Don't text me for like 24 hours, you know, like we can reconnect when I'm back online. Again, to what you said similarly, the building won't burn down, and if it does, I can't do anything about it regardless. So it's one of those things where, again, it's the work-life boundaries are super important, and telling people about that and being like, you know, you need some time, you need to decompress, you need to disassociate, and then come back online. And typically, I always think you feel more refreshed, you feel more energized, maybe you have some new creative ideas that you can contribute, but I think we all can agree that it's that work-life balance that you need to figure out.
Excellent, thank you. And maybe one last sort of optional free-form question. Is there one fun memory from JWU that, you know, an event you attended, a class that really jumps out, anything that comes to mind, something fun from your time here that you'd be willing to share?
I can start us off. So I failed my anatomy and physiology class. I always remember this story, and I tell it even to my nieces because I'm just like, you're gonna fail sometimes. I was busy partying and doing all the things that, you know, we do when we're in college. And I really had an argument with my teacher about how I didn't deserve to fail the class. So she's like, come back next semester. Like, we had this discussion, you failed. I go back the next semester, and I was like so upset because I was like, I failed this class, I don't have to be sitting here, this is not fair. And it turns out that like I had a closed mindset, right? I was so gung-ho about it, but then my professor was like, you know what, like, I understand how this feels for you, and it's okay, I get it. I've been there too. So let me sit you in front of the class, and then I'll stay with you 15 minutes after class to make sure that you digested everything. And I was like, oh my God, that is like, I was over here like, oh, I don't want to be with this professor. And it turns out that the people that you are turning away, those are the first ones to give you your flowers, and the first ones, especially your professors. Like, they'll lend your hand because they really want to see you succeed.
I think for me, fun memories. There's a particular professor, Professor DeJesus. Some of you may know him. We didn't always see eye to eye politically, and I took a lot of my politics-related classes with him, and we would frequently, I shouldn't say frequently, but sometimes have back and forths, have a dialogue, whether it be civil or uncivil in some instances, on certain topics, certain ideas, things like that. But I always thought it was annoying that my viewpoint and things like that were always being pressed and always being challenged, but I learned to, after the fact, really, really appreciate it. Because yeah, it's fun to, you know, sit in the classroom and argue back and forth about, you know, ideas and things like that, but one of the biggest things that it did for me was really flesh out my own ideas, but also better understand the ideas of other people. So it's kind of like it was a fun experience and a learning experience at the exact same time, and he always pushed me to challenge my beliefs and my ideas in that way. And I think personal development-wise, that was a really, really fantastic thing that he did for me.
And this one's optional, so, you know.
Yeah, I think my fond memories are classes that kind of had nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. I took a lessons in Shakespeare course with Professor Wagner, which was a blast. That was so fun. I took criminalistics, which obviously has a lot to do with criminal justice, but forensics isn't a ton of, it doesn't really come into play with what I'm doing with the law. But it was very cool to kind of learn all that technology and put on the lab coat, check stuff out. So again, wasn't super pertinent to what I'm doing now, but it was certainly different from kind of the rest, and that was fun.
I guess I'll just say quickly. Mine was more so like an after effect, I think, because I was still trying to figure out the end goal after college, and I more so built relationships with two of my professors in particular who, friended them on Facebook, kept in touch via LinkedIn, and like every time there's an update, like they're the first two to say something. And I keep in touch with them all the time, and I think not the funny thing, but like it's kind of funny in hindsight, like not knowing 4 years ago who I was going to stay in touch with and what those interactions were going to be like. But I think for me, it's just like making a friendship with those professors who helped me, and then also like them also encouraging me to connect with their classrooms and just like kind of share my experience being in their seats a couple of years ago, and then kind of circling back to where we are now. And then it's not really funny, but it's just like in my head, I didn't think that I'd stay friends with my professors or chat with them via Messenger, but here we are.
Super, thanks so much. And now, unless there are any final thoughts you would like to add, I think we could open it up for questions and answers. Yeah?
Hello, sorry. My first question for you guys, and this is just for everybody, but what are the biggest drawbacks you might find within finding an internship, and then what do you think there is to lose from an internship with the time that you have? Because it's a very precious time while you have in college.
I didn't find any drawbacks. So one of my internships was with Professor Gallagher in the Southside Cultural Center. When I was in that class, like I was already interested in like grant writing and technical writing because I knew that was one of the ways that organizations fund themselves. I think that one of the drawbacks was transportation. It was a little far, but I really did find that was one of the classes that really like honed in my skills for what technical writing is. I don't really have anything negative to say because internships, whether you may see them at that moment, that they take away your time and they feel like, I think you get to value them later on when you're in the field and you have like an area of expertise that maybe the people around you don't have because you had that exposure through your internship. In the moment, it doesn't feel like you may be learning anything, but believe me, when you are in industry, you're like, I remember this from my internship and I can like expand on this, so.
Yeah, I would add too that it's frustrating because you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know exactly what's going to work out great or not. I think the best you can really do is just find something that you think you'll be interested in, and even if it's the best job in the world, like the most pertinent thing to what you want to be doing, there could still be people there that you don't like working with, or vice versa. It could be something that you really hate doing substantively, but the people there are the nicest people in the world, or the best connections that you'll ever make. So I think like you just really can't go wrong. Like it's a little cliche, but even if it's not what you want to do, you learned that you don't want to do that, and that's still a valuable thing to learn from. So I really think you can't lose whichever way you go.
Yeah, and I was essentially going to say the exact same thing. I think when it comes to internships, there's not necessarily drawbacks in the sense, because you're always going to learn something, you're always going to take something away from it, regardless of what you're doing. You're always going to pick up skills that may be transferable to what you'd like to do down the road. It can be frustrating in the moment if you found yourself in an internship in an industry or something like that, where partway through you figure out, I don't know if this is what I want to be doing, I feel like I'm wasting my time, but unfortunately you're there and you made a commitment, so at that point it's, okay, well, I'm at least going to show up with a positive attitude and a smile every single day, and I'm going to try to pull as much from this opportunity as possible. So I wouldn't necessarily look at it in terms of, is it a drawback? What are the drawbacks? Is, X, Y, and Z? Because I think regardless of whatever opportunity you're presented with, you should be incredibly grateful for the opportunity. And from there, you can kind of build your own experience out of that. So if you go into something and you find that it's, I don't really like this. When I first came to school, I really wanted to go to law school. And then eventually I'd found out that, I'd like to push that to the side a bit and I'd like to go do something else. And that really changed the way that I looked at, well, maybe I don't want to intern in a law firm or the Attorney General's office. Maybe I want to go intern in politics. Maybe I want to go work in an office. So one of the ways that you can kind of prevent the onset of, is this a waste of my time, is something like that, is really piecing together, and I know it's tough if you're a sophomore or a junior of like, oh, this is what I want to be when I grow up, essentially. But having that frame of mind and that mindset prior to jumping into the commitment that you're making really helps, because then at least you feel like your time is valued and you're not losing anything. It's not a detriment to you, your education, your time being there, because you're still taking something. You're still drawing knowledge from the opportunity regardless of how you feel about it.
So I'll add to that, and no one hate me for this. If you go into an internship, and you don't feel like it's going to benefit you by any means, it's totally okay to pull back. Because I hit a point where I was taking on internships just to have them. This way I had that experience under my belt, while also working a work study and also having a part-time job. And this was during senior year, where it's one of the most crucial years in your college years. And I walked into an internship, and I think I tried 2 or 3 days there, and no one was helping me. It wasn't the way that it was supposed to be. There was no structure to it. And even though they, advertise it as such, and you had this interview, and you go in and you think that it's going to go the way that they said it would, it sometimes doesn't. And it's totally okay to pull back from something if you don't feel like it's going to be beneficial. Well, if it's challenging, that's a different story. But if there's just no benefit to it whatsoever, if you don't feel like you're going to get anything out of it, that's okay. Like, I'm sure that there's probably going to be another internship for you that will better benefit you in the long run. Yeah.
I'm actually a firm believer in internship, but I want to ask the question because I feel like some people are more scared of them.
Oh, for sure. No, it's important.
It's actually kind of cool how you guys are arranged. You guys are exactly arranged how I first came to school. I had first medical approach, then I had marketing, and then now I went to law school. So the way you guys arranged yourself is actually quite iconic.
It's a journey, honey. It's a journey.
Thank you guys so much for answering my question.
Yeah, no problem.
That was an excellent question. Other questions?
This is for I remember some of you, I don't know if like changing majors and stuff, because I went through the same thing. I started as criminal justice and now I'm media communications. And one thing that I'm noticing is like all of my criminal justice classes that I had taken prior all went towards my electives. So now I'm dealing with like a limited amount of extra electives I could take. So how did you, did any of you guys have to deal with that? And if you did, what decisions or what was your mindset in terms of like taking the most logical classes for you, I guess?
I lost courses, to be honest. Did you guys lose any courses in changing?
Well, I transferred schools. So when I transferred from my first university, having been a criminal justice major, most of my classes were sociology based. Switching here and coming and being a media and communications student, that really didn't do anything for me in the long run. I think I was able to keep maybe one of my credits, so maybe 2. So really I had to repeat freshman year essentially as a sophomore. So you just have to be strategic, I think, in your planning of which classes you want to take and what you think your long-term goal is. It's okay to not know right away, but I mean, if you think that you have an idea, it's better to take those electives that you think will benefit you that way, because you can always take more if need may be, or again, change your route. But I don't know, it was basically like starting from the ground up. So I just took what fit my schedule and what interested me. So it might be different for someone else.
Yeah, I lost some courses, but what I did was I went to the student center, and I sat down with my advisor, and we went through the handbook. Like, we sat there for like an hour and a half. We went through the handbook, and I contributed to like, oh, maybe this class makes sense to transition. Maybe this one doesn't make sense, because if you're gonna lose electives or if you're gonna lose courses, you also have to feel empowered to like choose which ones you want to lose, because that's gonna make more sense for your trajectory. And there's some that you may really have to give up because they don't match up with like the course catalog, but you should really be active in participating and advocating for what course you think makes sense as you transition, because if you lose a course, then you could say, oh, at least I kept the one because it was my choice to keep this course that makes sense for me. Whether you use it or not, it could become a hobby or whatever, but just make sure that you guys feel empowered to participate in that, because the Student Center is there to work with you, but eventually this is your track. This is what you want to study, so participate as much as you can and advocate for yourself. If you have to write the petition sheet, I don't know if they still have that, you can write that too, because this is your career, this is what you're studying, and you're spending money, so you might want to like get involved.
Going off of that, the Student Center, I think I remember sitting down when I realized that none of my credits were going to transfer the way I thought they did. Sitting down with your advisor, I quite literally like mapped out the next 3 years, like what courses I was going to take. I think you did that too. Yeah, but I think going to sit down with your advisor is going to be probably your best bet, just so that you can plan accordingly for your years.
And checking in with them.
Yeah.
Because you met with them
Every well, it was trimester, but yeah, every semester now it's best to go make an appointment with your advisor and kind of build off of it that way.
You should, I used to meet with them at the beginning. I'm not even using the mic, I'm sorry. I used to meet with them at the beginning, and then I would meet with them at the end, like a couple weeks before my classes were like culminating, because sometimes like my interests evolved and I wanted to like switch up some of the things I wanted to take the next semester.
Yeah, this isn't something that I personally experienced, but echoing the sentiments of the rest of the panel, I'd never be afraid to advocate for yourself. The school has a lot of fantastic resources, fantastic people, whether it be academic advisors, people in student services, peer mentors, what have you, that are there essentially to help you piece together what you'd like to achieve, where you see kind of like the vision for your future, how you can reorganize your schedule to maybe attain certain goals or kind of reel back in areas that you think may not be beneficial to your change in program of study. And I would always take advantage of them, because I know for me personally, I had a very hard time when it came to picking and choosing what classes I needed to take, the order in which I should take them from freshman year to senior year to be able to graduate on time, things like that. And I definitely would not have been able to do that on my own had I not had the help from some of the most amazing people here at the school. So definitely take advantage of those resources, because they're truly fantastic people.
Yeah, I would add to that too, just to say I wish I had taken advantage of that resource sooner. I didn't really meet with an academic advisor, I think, until the like halfway point of my second year or towards the end of my second year. And it was at that point that I realized that I could graduate in 3 years through the SHARP program. But at that point, I was kind of cramming a lot into that last year, whereas if I had had that conversation earlier, I could have made my life a lot easier if I knew then that that was the goal I was trying to attain.
And I want to add a little bit to what you said about the resources, if I may. I think that, you know, you don't see how valuable this institution is until you're on the outside world. And when I was doing my master's, it felt very lonely sometimes, because at least here, you can talk to your peers, you can talk to a professor, you can go to Weybase, is it Weybase Cafe still? And you'll meet a bunch of people there. Oh my God, I feel so, oh Jesus. I'm showing my age. But you can go to any of the halls and just like engage and hear what people's experiences are and hear how they're utilizing the resources. Just because you have those resources here doesn't mean you're gonna have them on the outside world. And you may not see it now because you're students and you're living in the day-to-day, but when you go into another academic endeavor or you go into a professional endeavor, you're gonna wish that you had the wealth of resources that you have here. The support is everywhere, so just make sure you use that, because it's gonna also prepare you for the outside world on how to advocate for yourself, how to stand up for what you believe in, how to leverage the resources around you. Those are things that I think we all learned here.
Until we have another question, I'll just say I really appreciate that you all just highlighted both of the things that we really emphasize with students as they progress through their programs. taking ownership of one's own academic trajectory, not just assuming someone else will make the schedule, but really taking a vested interest in, creating a path that makes the most sense, and also connecting with the resources that we have available, faculty mentors, faculty advisors, academic counselors, the network of supports that we have available to provide guidance along the way. So thank you for that. Are there other questions? We have microphones on both sides.
Hello. When you finished college, like right after, was there a point that you might have felt lost on like what to do next, or how did you get out of that, or what are some tips you may have to pursuing the career that you want to pursue? How did you go about doing it and things like that?
I think one of the things that worked for me, and this was advice that was provided to me by a friend that's a little older, he's in law school right now, was to avoid kind of that lull in between when you graduate and you're looking for employment. One of the pieces of advice that he'd given me is start applying for jobs 6 months before you graduate. And that was super beneficial for me because I was able to graduate, and then I think 3 weeks after graduation, I was starting my first job. And I'd had everything confirmed. I was ready, to transition over. I was doing my training at that point, meeting the attorneys in the office that I was working in. And it was very comforting to know that like maybe a month before graduation or whenever I, kind of confirmed all of that information, it was very comforting to know I don't have to, scramble and try to find this and do all these resources because I already have something locked down. So I think that kind of like 6 months prior to graduation, I think that's definitely I'll pass that advice along to you guys because I think it was a fantastic piece of advice that was given to me. It really put me in a position where I was able to avoid that period of like, oh God, what am I doing? I'm out of school, I don't have a job, I don't know the first thing about finding a job. And the benefit to starting early in terms of looking for employment is you're still here. So just like we were talking about how the school has amazing resources that help you, do your classes and scheduling and things like that, there are plenty of people in this building that are also willing to work with you to, figure out what your career goals may be, help you apply, write a resume, write a cover letter if you don't have those things. And those are all incredibly useful assets to have now, because in that 6 month period, you've provided yourself with all of those resources, and you might have secured employment or something like that, and you've really avoided that very scary, period. Because I know people that have gone through it where you don't know what to do. You might feel a little hopeless. You're looking for employment, but something hasn't come along yet. The deadline for the loan payments are going to start kicking up in 6 months. That date starts creeping closer and closer, and so I think the 6 months prior to graduation, I think that's one of the best ways to really avoid that.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of pressure, especially self-imposed, at least in my case, of kind of knowing, like, from the moment you graduate, getting your dream job. Like you're done, and it's like, all right, now I'm done, so time to start doing what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think that can be kind of troublesome in that you don't need to be doing right away what you want to be doing for the rest of your life. And for me, I went right into law school from graduation. I actually needed one more class to graduate in the summer, so I think I submitted my last final on like August 1st, and my first law school classes were August 15th or something crazy like that. But my point is that in my law school, I think top 10 of our class, 8 or 9 of them, took time off in between college and law school. And I didn't do that, and that is a risk, and it worked out well for me. Like, I don't have any regrets, but anytime I talk to people who are interested in law school or in master's programs to get some real world experience, a lot of people will, at least in the law school track, will go out and be a paralegal for a year or two and just kind of learn the ropes of what it's like actually working in a law firm or for the state or wherever. And I think it applies to other majors too, of just having something where, again, you're learning. It's kind of what we were talking about with internships. Like, there's no real bad experience because you're learning about yourself and what you want to do.
To quickly go off of the internship comment, like that's why internships are so important. And if you feel that something may be of interest to you, again, I think 6 months before graduating is a really great timeline to start. But circling back with those internships, if you liked them, if you thought that you left a good impression, circling back with them is always great, because even at the end of the day, if you don't get a job straight out of college, at least you have interviews lined up. Like you go back home, or if you're home in Rhode Island, whatever it may be, at least you have something to go home to, and you can build off of it that way.
I just want to echo your comment about taking time off. So although it's not visible, I was one of the students with disabilities, so I was immersed in the disabilities center. And I knew that I needed to take time off because I needed to take care of myself, make sure that I was on the correct clinical plan before I went on to the next thing. And that was one of the best things I could do, because it allowed me to hit a reset button and then go home and talk to my family and just really think about what was the best next step. I actually took off 2.5 years before I went back to doing my master's. And during that year, I worked a little bit, but most of it I spent with my neurologist and with my psychiatrist and my clinical team, planning for what was the best next step. Because when I first came to JWU, I kind of just threw myself in, and it was very stressful. So I didn't want to repeat that again, because I knew that my body just wasn't going to be able to take that. So it is okay to take time off. I still am in contact with disability centers, so that I know this is a resource for me if I decide to go back, both at Harvard and both here.
Thank you so much for those wonderful responses.
Hi, I have a question for Elena. You kind of touched on it a little bit in your answer a couple questions ago, about how your interests evolved later as you were going through college. Can you speak to students who have maybe a lot of interests, or their interests keep evolving, and junior year and senior year is approaching, and it's still well, I could do 5 different things, but can you speak to how do you figure that out? Do you pick one and hope for the best? And then kind of a 2-part question with that, tying into that. If you feel like you need to take time off, how do you deal with maybe a fear of missing out? Oh, my peers, they're getting in, and should I really take this time off, and that kind of stuff.
To clarify, wait, who was that, to me, or was that to all of us? All of us. Okay, no, we just weren't sure. We didn't know. I think something is your interests are always going to continue to evolve, even in our careers. I mean, even now, I say that I specialize in hotels and restaurants, but I talk with lifestyle brands and influencer marketing agencies, and though I might not be going down those roads now, my point is that it'll continue to evolve. It'll never stop. And you can think that you'll hit a fine line where you thought you have it figured out, but I think, as cliche as it sounds, as the world keeps changing, our interests keep evolving. So I think it's just important to be open-minded. And if you see an opportunity, take it, try it, and if it doesn't work out, at least, again, I think it's you tried, you tested it out.
I agree. That's a great question, because I was one of those students that was oh my God, I want to try everything. But I think it's when you're starting to enter into your junior year, you start to think oh my God, I have to buckle down. I have 2 years left. There's nothing wrong with exploring, and there's nothing wrong with FOMO, because FOMO is real. I think that one of the things that grounded me was understanding that my peers were always going to be there, and if they were really my peers and they loved me and they supported me, they would understand that I needed to do what I needed to do for me, because we're here, we're having fun, but we're also here to meet a goal, to graduate so that we could get on and move on to the next thing. I was one of those students that I took 2 years off, and then I came back, and there was definitely that fear of missing out. Some of my closest friends, it was a group of 7 girls, and when I came back, they were no longer here, And it was really hard for me, but it was also like, hey, they're doing life and I'm happy for them. I'm gonna meet a new cohort of people that are gonna expose me to new things, and I'm gonna be able to evolve as a person, and that's what kept me grounded. So if you wanna take a break, you can certainly do that. Like, your friends will always be there, but just make sure that as your interests are evolving, that you're aligning yourself with the right opportunities and the right people in your circle so that you can feel that you're filling in for that FOMO that you're having.
Yeah, I would add to that as well, especially on the taking a break part. I know that I personally struggle a lot with this. There's this tendency to compare yourself to others and people in your peer group and saying, well, even your successes, well, I did this, but that person did it so much better, or that person did it faster or more publicly, and they were publicly praised for this, and so therefore they're better than me, or I'm not good enough. But in comparing yourself to your peers and where they are, I think in reference to taking a break, if you were to be in the same place as your peers, but you are spreading yourself too thin, or you're not able to give your 100% because you're struggling with a variety of issues that all of us struggle with and don't talk about, then you're not going to be your best self, and you're not going to be as happy as you would be if you had taken the time and come back and did it 100% and did it on your terms. And I think it's so easy to group ourselves together with others, but I think if you really look at it, there's so much differences in people's exact experiences that don't really matter in the sense of to other people. They matter in that they make you individual and they give you unique experiences, but as far as how you're going to be looked at by other people when you're applying for jobs or trying to advance in your career, I think that it's really easy to get in your own head and be concerned that if I take this break, like, how am I going to explain this gap in my resume? Or what are people going to think? But again, like, I really think it's just so important being in the best physical and mental state of mind that you can be when you're doing what you want. And if you have to explain to people, like, I took time off because I needed it, then I really don't think that's going to harm you. If anything, it's going to make you better off for just being in touch with yourself and doing what you know is right.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with pretty much everything that everyone said. I think, especially what Michael was saying here, it's going to make you much more resilient. Building off of what he was saying, comparison very much is the thief of joy. You should never be focused on, especially with that FOMO element that you were talking about of, if I do this, I'm going to miss out on this, or if I don't do this, I'm not going to be able to do this. Because at the end of the day, you always want to be looking out for your own best interests. And that should always be at the forefront of your mind, is I'm doing this not for other people, but I'm doing this for the betterment of myself. If you think that what you're doing is the most appropriate choice for you, then that's the most appropriate choice for you. Not the sentiments that are being echoed by other people, or the trends that other people are following, or the things that other people are doing, or the paths that other people are walking. If you don't think that those are the right fit for you, and you need to take a step back and reevaluate, you should never be ashamed or afraid to do so. Because I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to personal development and growth, is being able to take a step back and reflect and be like, is this the position that I want to be in? Is this where I see myself in 5 years? Do I want to, everybody is doing this, but do I really want to do that? Do I think that's going to be helpful? Because like I said, it all kind of circles back to when you're looking at all of those things and all of those aspects, all the things that impact your life, the number one thing that should be popping up into your head is not how this affects other people, but how does this impact myself? And so you should always be, looking into, is this the avenue that I want to take? Is this the approach that I want to take? Is this what I'm interested in? This might not be the most, like me personally, I have a very unhealthy obsession with taxes. I love taxes. It's one of the most unpopular things on the face of the planet. But I really enjoy them, and I really like working with them, and I like doing research on them and policy on them and things like that. Is it kind of out in the woodwork there? Yeah, but it's something that I enjoy, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I'm able to produce good and quality work with. So I don't think you should necessarily, I think keeping that kind of like fear of missing out mentality and things like that is more of a handicap than anything else, because it's going to limit you from reaching your true potential. That's really only going to be untapped by following what you think is best for yourself.
And Jonathan, I love what you said, because one of the things that I realized when I was here is that the path that God has for me may not be the path that God has for my friends. And that was like something, at first, it was something really hard to sit with because I really wanted to stay here and be with my friends. But I also knew that I needed to do like what I was interested in and what I felt was like attractive to Joanne. And sometimes there was things that like my friends were doing and studying, and I was like, oh, that just doesn't feel right for me. So that's a good thing to understand too. Like the path that's meant for you may not be meant for somebody else. And if that's the break that you need, then that's part of the path, you know, like it's trial and error, but you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, every single person is put here for a very specific reason. And when you find that reason, the only thing you need to worry about is how can I be the best me in this role? How can I best perform in this capacity? You found what's clicked, you found something that you like. Okay, now it's how can I be the best version of myself doing this thing? And that's the most important thing, and I think you should always focus about. It's not, kind of circling back to what I was saying earlier, not the opinions of others, the thoughts of others, what other people are doing and things like that, but what you think is the best path for you, your main motivation, your passion, and what you'd like to achieve for yourself down the road.
So thank you so much, everyone, for these wonderful perspectives. This is actually bringing us right up to the point where we need to switch gears. So I want to thank our alumni again for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us today and for such an engaging discussion. You are a wealth of knowledge, and the experiences that you shared with us were inspiring and so appreciated. Please remain connected with us. We are so proud of each of you. And for the current JWU students who were able to join us today, we hope you found this information insightful and helpful for navigating your own particular career paths. And the alumni will be here for the next few minutes, ready to talk with you one-on-one. So please visit them and grow your professional network. Okay, have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.